Hi, welcome to Talk with Ted. This is a time during our service where we have been taking the opportunity to speak with Pastor Ted, who is a pastor and counselor, about some of the issues that we've been facing since COVID-19 started, which is multiple, right?
That's right.
Many issues are happening, and so we have talked about a lot of different issues, and today we're going to talk about children and how that works into the family mix and what kind of an effect is that having on them and how can we include them in what's happening. Am I right?
That's right, yeah.
Okay, good.
I think we've been talking about relationships the last three sessions, talking about husband and wife relationship, how we communicate.
Yeah.
I think it's quite natural then to say, okay, what do we do with the area of our children as we face the closed-in effect and how that would affect us?
Yeah, some parents I think are really struggling being home with their kids all the time. Not that they don't love their kids, but that there's this coping that has to happen that generally with the long expanded period doesn't happen, right?
Yeah, usually they go off to school for at least 6 hours and then they come back and you get to engage in what they've learned at school, but now you're teaching them and then they're not responding the way you think they should respond. So what's the next step?
Yeah, it's hard. So what kind of advice do we have for them?
I think the first thing is sometimes because we get frustrated, we respond in anger. And I think we model a behavioral issue that we need to be careful about. I don't want to respond in anger. I want to respond in love and kindness, and I want to find a way to do that. There's two verses of scripture I just want to mention to start with, and I've written them down just for clarity's sake. Ephesians chapter 4 says, fathers, do not provoke your children to anger. Bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord. And then a verse you talked about a couple of weeks ago, I think, train up a child in the way he should go. When he's old, he'll not depart from that. Doesn't mean he won't walk away from that, but that teaching will always be here. It'll always be there for them regardless. And I want to suggest to you, rather than respond in anger, I want to suggest a modeling that I used when my kids were growing up that helped me, because I tend to want certain things to be in a certain way, and I need to find a way to deal with that. And I when we're going through that, I established a family meeting where we sat down, the four of us, two kids, a son and daughter and my wife. We sat down and talked about what the issues were. It takes a little bit of preparation, because in that preparation, you and your wife or you and your husband are sitting down and saying, okay, what's this look like for us? We want to be in control, but we want to allow them to have some influence in the decisions that are being made. So we sit down with our kids and we discuss expectations and consequences. And so in that, I wanted to find a way to say, okay, I want you to be engaged in what we're deciding here. Remember, you're the parent. I was in the police force a number of years ago. This goes back 40 years. And I saw some parents trying to give the kids too much control, and that backfired. And so I want to find a way to say that I'm the parent, but I want to value your input in the decisions we make. So I start by a list of chores. I look for input and what they would suggest as far as chores would look like for them. I want to talk about clear expectations so they understand where I'm coming from, and then engage them in some type of discussion of what that looks like for them. Basically what we talked about for husband and wife, I need to listen to what they're saying and then package that back so I know I get the right picture from them of what they're thinking about. I remember coming home one day after assigning my son one of his responsibilities to put in the garbage. And I came home about 8 o'clock at night and the garbage wasn't on the curb. And I was not happy. And I went in the house and I started to call for my son, and my wife said, what's wrong? I said, well, the garbage isn't out. She said to me, make sure that you were clear on what you were saying. Well, it's Tuesday night. Garbage goes out Tuesday night. What's wrong with that? In the discussion, I guess we talked about the fact that maybe they were going to change the garbage to Thursday, and he didn't know what night it was. And so when I realized that, I just had to clarify what that looked like for him, and that helped. So I need to clarify what that looks like. I need to also talk in advance what the consequences is if this isn't done. I want to be able to say, are you sure you understand what the consequence will be that you lose so much TV time or internet time or whatever the case may be? And I want to be careful with that, because I don't want to I don't want to say, okay, you lose it for a month, because we got to live with that too.
Right.
And I want to say, okay, for the next, this evening, you won't have any internet. And if they want to talk back to me, I say, whoa, if you want to talk back, I'll add another hour to that.
So Ted, how do you determine the level of consequences that you inflict?
I think age is number one. You don't treat a 2-year-old the same as you treat a 13-year-old. And even that with the level of responsibility they have. I'd like to say, here's your responsibility, here's your chores for the week. Put it in a prominent place like on the fridge and say, okay, this is what's expected of you this week. The youngest one, maybe just put the dishes in the dishwasher or take them out of the dishwasher, simple as that. Or pick up after you or something. But the older ones would have more responsibility. So I want to be careful that it's got to be age appropriate. It's got to be consequence. It's got to match the issue that was disobedient. So if it's something simple, I just say, whoa, hold on a second now. I like the 3 strikes. Number 1 is warning. Remember, we talked about this, and that's your job. The second thing is saying, okay, this is serious, because next time you're going to lose 3 hours of your internet time. They know that in advance. So they got that picture, and that can help them to understand. No excuses, but the consequences will be, this is where we go. And then when it happens and they lose that internet time, I want to sit down with them and say, what happened there? Did you not understand what I was asking you to do? Right. If that's the case, I'm going to back off. But when we hit strike 3, we've got to follow through. You can't say, well, we'll forget about this time. No, we got to follow through with something. Yeah. If I've been too harsh when saying, oh, you're going to lose it for a week, I might say, well, I'm sorry, that was a mistake on my part. We should just do 3 hours or 4 hours. If it happens again, I'm going to add another hour or 2 to that. So they understand, or maybe just sometimes just simply a timeout. And I would use it this way. If I'm at work and I'm doing something I shouldn't be doing, I'm going to be held accountable for that. If I'm driving down the road and there's a police officer's radar, I'm probably going to get a ticket. And I've always maintained, if I get a ticket and I'm at fault, I'm going to pay that. I'm not going to fight something that I know I've done wrong. And if I can do that, that can be very, very helpful. Remember this. I'm trying to raise children that are going to be responsible mature adults. And if I can give them a say in that, it helps them to understand what that means. And sometimes we can say to them, hey, what would you do if you're the parent? And I found that sometimes they're harsher on that way than when I would be. And I remember somebody saying one time, don't dictate, but lead. And I heard a comment from somebody, I can't remember who to give credit this to, but he said, if you think you're leading and nobody's following you, you're really just taking a walk. Yeah. And you need to stop and say, okay, am I leading or am I driving? I don't want to drive. I want to lead. I want to find that place where I can say to my kids, I value what that is. And then look for reward. If there's a consequence, there's also got to be reward. Sometimes we're so set on the consequence. What's the reward for that? So if I look at somebody and they've got 3 stars on that calendar or 5 stars in that calendar that week, there's got to be something at the end of the line. Maybe it's a few dollars to go to the store. Maybe it's an ice cream cone. I mean, back in the day when I was, that's what you got, an ice cream cone. And so that's just one way. There's many ways, and we need to stop and review that and adjust to make that fit for us. Good. That's just one start.
Yeah, good. I like what you said at the very beginning, though. Don't do any of this in anger.
That's right.
You got to hold the anger, right? And if you get angry, you go, wait, I'm going to go cool off, and we'll come back to this a little bit later.
We lead our kids to anger when we respond in anger.
Yeah.
And I don't want to lead my kids in anger. I want to stop and say, okay, Lord, and without without recognizing, first thing to do is pray. Right. Lord, what would you want me to do to raise these kids to honor you in every way? Good steps, good advice. I hope that will help somebody. And if you have any questions you'd like to ask Ted, there's an email address at the bottom of the screen that you could send him an email, ask him a question. He's actually a pretty nice guy, and he will answer in a very kind manner, and it might be helpful for you. Thank you, Ted, for helping us with this, and I think we should continue this conversation. Good.
All right. Thank you.